Are we getting on the cannon together?
Not to butt.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Welcome to the Varnum Armory.
Look at me, traffic. Can't stand this place. It's Rhode Island. They're white. They've never seen such dastardly behavior. So is this like a legitimate, like old National Guard armory?
So we're actually very unusual. So the organization that originally built this place is called the Varnum Continentals. Originally a state-chartered militia, believe it or not, a ceremonial militia. And we had a fife and drum corps. Some of our instruments you'll see up top on the stage there. But our whole purpose was to promote patriotism and a love for our country and to celebrate the sacrifices of our veterans. One of my favorite objects in this building, it's on loan to us from the state of Rhode Island, is this Civil War cannon. It's called the Gettysburg Gun. So this 12-pound Napoleon, the tube was forged in Boston, Massachusetts. It belonged to Battery B, 1st Rhode Island Light Artillery. So a battery of artillery in the American Civil War, you would have 6 of these guns, about 150 horses, about 120 Rhode Islanders in this battery. It's in all the major battles of the American Civil War in the Eastern Theater up until the Battle of Gettysburg, where it earns its nickname. Battle of Gettysburg, July 1st, 2nd, 3rd of 1863. It's the biggest battle in the American Civil War. It's a 3-day fight. There's about 165,000 Americans that fight each other over these 3 days. It's hard to imagine that scale today. By the end of the fight, there's 51,000 killed, wounded, or missing. It's just hard to imagine those numbers. Battery B arrives on the battlefield on day 2, July 2nd. And the main Federal Army is behind a stone wall on Cemetery Ridge, face to the west, facing the Confederate Army. And Battery B, for whatever reason, gets thrown 150 yards in advance of their infantry, perpendicular, face to the north. They are totally exposed. They know they're going to get attacked, and they have their guns deployed, and they're engaging with a Confederate battery near Robert E. Lee's headquarters on the Chambersburg Pike. They ended up getting hit in their flank by 1,200 Howling Georgians of Wright's Brigade. They quickly close the distance, becomes hand-to-hand combat. The Gettysburg Gun is captured in this fight. Eventually, Union reinforcements would come up, infantry, beat the Georgians away, and they would recapture this gun and get it back to Battery B. On the 3rd and final day of the battle, the gun is now behind the stone wall. And Robert E. Lee decides to attack the Union center behind that stone wall, right where Battery B was located. They were kind of the center of the whole Union line. And you may have heard of the famous infantry assault called Pickett's Charge, right? He sends 12,000 infantry roughly across these open fields to attack the Union center. Preceding the infantry assault, they had massed 150 guns across a 2-mile front. And at 1 p.m. on July 3rd, a signal gun went off, triggering all of these guns to start firing repeatedly. No one knows how long this barrage lasted. They think 1 to 2 hours, somewhere in that time frame. It was the loudest event in human history up until this point in time. They could hear the gunfire 35 miles away in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The men talked about how the ground literally shook beneath their feet. It's during this great cannonade that Battery B begins to return fire.
I'm sorry, but there's no hearing protection at this point.
No, I know.
Nobody's hearing shit after.
I don't know how any of them escaped with their hearing. You know, it blows my mind. So they begin to return fire. William Jones is the number 1 man. He's standing here. He's the guy with the rammer and sponge. He volunteered to replace an exhausted cannoneer. The number 1 guy literally collapsed on the ground and just was completely useless. He volunteered to take his position despite the fact that the night before he had a premonition that he was not going to survive this battle. He tells his men, I'm not going to make it. He just knows it. Alfred Gardner, the man in the middle, is the number 2 man. He's standing over here. He's the guy that would load the shell into the tube. John Green is behind the axle on that side. Alfred Gardner is in his mid-40s. He has 5 children at home. His wife's name is Adelia. He's a very religious guy, as a lot of people were in the 19th century. And Alfred had a Bible in the pocket of his coat at this very moment with his name embossed on the cover, Alfred G. Gardner. And he used the Bible as a diary. So in the margins of the pages, he writes little messages to his 5 kids, words of advice, words of wisdom, emotional stuff. He takes a shell, a bag of gunpowder, and a round solid shot, and he's turning to put it into the tube, but before he gets there, a Confederate shell from a mile away arches over the battlefield and strikes the muzzle. You see the dent in the 4 o'clock position.
I was about to ask about that, but I didn't want to interrupt your story.
That shell explodes. It decapitates William Jones, throws him several feet forward. Alfred Gardner has his left arm severed below his shoulder. He gets a gaping wound in his rib cage. He ends up laying against this wheel, and he's laying there with his one remaining arm outstretched. He's conscious, but he's bleeding to death. His best buddy, his tent mate, was Albert Strait of West Greenwich, Rhode Island. Albert says that he immediately goes to Alfred. He grabs Alfred's hands, and the first words out of Alfred's mouth was, "Please tell my wife I died happy. Please, please make sure she gets my Bible." Albert says they're in the midst of battle. They're under fire. He's like, "I didn't take the Bible right away." He says, "I bid farewell to him. I shook his hand." He said, I turned my back. And he says that he heard Alfred yell out in a loud and clear voice, "Glory be to God. Hallelujah. I am happy. Amen." And then moments after saying these words, he bleeds out and dies laying against the wheel. Albert, determined to return fire, picks up the shell that Alfred had dropped in the ground. They separate the round shot from the powder bag. They get the powder bag down the tube, but the round shot, he has a guy literally holding it there. He yells for an axe, takes the backside of an axe, and he's standing and he's pounding, trying to pound the ball past that dent. It wouldn't budge. And slowly over time, that tube would cool, permanently fusing to that round shot. So that is the very round shot that Alfred had dropped when struck. As he was doing that with the axe, a shell would strike the axle. This is all recorded by the men. This is not post-war, like people saying, "Oh, that's because of this or that." These men recorded all of the strikes and hits on this gun after this battle. So you see the damage on the axle. Another shell came from the side, blew out the spoke in the back of the wheel that's still missing, slammed into the cheek piece of the gun, and it was at that point that they declared the gun unserviceable, and they left it there. That shot mortally wounded John Green. He took wood and metal into his torso. He would linger in a field hospital for 2 weeks before he would pass away. So they repulse Pickett's charge, right? This becomes a big victory for the North. They hold their position. The next day on July 4th, they begin to dig a hole in front of their gun, and they begin to wrap William Jones and Alfred Gardner in a red blanket. Albert remembers the Bible, and he asks one of his men to go to Alfred's body and retrieve the Bible. We have it on display downstairs.
I'm not gonna lie, this tour is starting out amazing. Like, you got me straight captivated. Like,
Yeah, I get choked up. I've told this story a million times, and I still get choked up. Anyway, the last message that he wrote in the Bible, when you read the inscriptions, you understand why those were his dying words. It says, July 2nd, 1863, Gettysburg. So he's writing it the day before he dies. He says, "In battery, all ready for action. I'm well in body, and my mind is clear about the future. The thought of heaven has cheered me on this march from Falmouth to Pennsylvania." And then he writes, "Children, exclamation point. Always be of good cheer. Always do right. This is the wish of your father." And those would be the last words that he would write to his kids. Albert, being a good friend, did send the Bible home to Alfred's wife. Her name was Adelia. He actually explained to her like how he died, basically told the whole story I just told you. He told her that. We have a letter from Adelia where she refers to the Bible as a national treasure, a symbol of the sacrifice that Rhode Island made in the Civil War. We have this uncanny ability to find lost Rhode Island military history all over the country, and we figure out how to bring it back home. It's almost like supernatural. So we share these stories on social media, Facebook and Instagram. We know from letters that still exist today that Alfred had written to his family that he would often pick wildflowers along the march in the battlefields. He would pick these flowers, he would carefully note the date and location of where he picked them, and he would mail them home to his wife, Adelia. We just knew that from the letters. So I share these stories, like I said, and about 2 years ago, an active duty Army officer in Maryland messages me on Facebook, and he says, "I've got something you're going to want." I'm like, okay. He's like, related to this. So I ended up meeting him in Gettysburg, and he walks right up to me and he gives me this little black ledger book. I opened the cover, and inside it says Adelia Gardner, 1870. And I was like, whoa. And then on all of the subsequent pages were all of the wildflowers that he had mailed home to her, she had kept. And she carefully noted the date and location of where he picked them. And I have it open to a particular page downstairs. It's on display with the Bible. And it says June 22nd, 1863, Falmouth, Virginia. And she wrote the last. Feel free to walk around inside the ropes. There's battle damage all over the gun. There's shots on the tube itself.
Oh yeah, you can see like bullet
Yeah.
ricochets and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is.
I mean, it is, these two Civil War guns are arguably the most original Civil War artillery pieces. They're on their original carriages. Biggest collection of Civil War artillery is Gettysburg National Military Park. They have, I don't know, over 100 guns on the field. None of them have the original carriage. They're all reproduction. If you see,
This is the original carriage.
yeah, so you see a shot here, and then this one, it even dents the steel tire. So that was high velocity strike.
This is the thing. Like, we see modern combat now, and I've worked with artillery guys. I was air defense myself, and in our neck of the woods, like style of combat, it happened, but it was pretty rare that artillery guys were under any kind of direct fire.
Right.
And these guys are literally just slinging lead rounds.
Line of sight.
Yeah, line of sight. They got cannonballs landing around them. There's bullet holes like all riddled through this thing. There's like 2 of them right there.
How did they stay here? I don't know how you would not run away.
A belief in the cause and major stones. That's all I'm thinking. Like it's
And not one to let your buddy down.
yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk about this coat. So this is a artillery officer's frock coat. His private purchased forage cap. You see the cross cannons with the one in the center. This was worn by this guy,
That guy's making me feel fat as fuck right now.
Yeah.
T. Fred Brown. So he's the battery commander of the Gettysburg Gun in Battery B upstairs. He's at the Battle of Gettysburg. He's very, very short. He's 5'0". Maria, our conservator, based on the jacket size. He is so small, even for that time, that when the war breaks out, he tries to enlist in the 1st Rhode Island Detached Militia Infantry, and they're like, you're too short, go away. Undeterred, he ends up in the artillery. They take him. And he has very strong leadership skills, and he quickly rises to command Battery B. And at the Battle of Gettysburg, if you remember on that, they arrived on day 2 of the battle. They get thrown 150 yards in advance of the infantry, the perpendicular. So remember this, he's on a roan-colored horse, a silver-tipped haired horse. He's behind the battery. He says he's getting nervous. He knows they're going to get attacked. And they look to the west, to their left, and they see this large body of troops appear on the horizon. A lot of the guys thought it was their infantry support. It turned out to be those Wright's Brigade Georgians. Complete melee. Fred has the presence of mind to lead a fighting retreat back to the stone wall to the right. And if you go to Gettysburg National Military Park and you stand in that position at the stone wall, there's a gap in the wall of like 30 feet. And the park rangers forever refer to it as Brown's Gate, in honor of Fred for leading his battery through that hole in the wall. He's able to roll their guns through there to save his battery from being captured. And he is just inside the stone wall. He's on his roan-colored horse. He's leaned over holding a pistol in the air, and he's yelling at another officer when he is shot through the neck. Bullet enters, nicks his carotid artery, exits the back of his neck. He falls from his horse. He's bleeding profusely. He loses consciousness, and he's basically left for dead. Eventually, those reinforcements come up. They beat the Georgians away. Somebody finds Fred. They realize he has a pulse. He ends up at a field hospital. He writes a telegram to his father, which we have the original. And he's trying to keep his dad from freaking out. And he literally says, "Don't worry, father, it's just a flesh wound," he says, which is pretty awesome.
That might be the first usage of that before the Black Knight. And that might be.
So he's then sent home to Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. He recovers over several months, and he goes back to the battery in October of that year, and he fights all the way through to the end of the Civil War, right through to Lee's surrender. He's there for the surrender. Fast forward 30 years after the battle. These guys are old men at this point. Veterans return to Gettysburg to plan what would become the national park. And units have to get permission to place a monument on the battlefield in a given spot. And if you go there, there's over 1,300 beautiful limestone marble monuments carved by the greatest artist of the day. It's literally one of the biggest museums in the world. And to have permission to put a monument in a given spot, you had to get 2 other units to agree that you were really in that spot, because everybody wanted to say that they were the furthest forward and whatnot. So Wright's Brigade, they're trying to figure out where to put their monument. And one of those 1,200 guys from Georgia, Simeon Theus of Savannah, Georgia, remembers that they had attacked a Rhode Island battery. So Simeon writes a letter to the Providence Journal newspaper, still our newspaper today. And he says to them, can you help us get in touch with these Rhode Island boys? They're not going to forget who we are or who we were. The Projo takes the letter and they give it to Fred 30 years after the war. And Fred writes Simeon and he says, I, sir, had the honor of commanding the battery that day, and you guys shot me. Simeon writes back and he literally says, whoa, period. I don't want to put words in your head, but can you tell me what you were doing in the moments just before you were shot? Were you on a roan-colored horse waving a pistol in the air? Because I've been telling the story for decades that you were the only Yankee I was sure I had killed. We were marching forward and a guy next to me grabbed me, pointed at you, and he said, shoot that Yankee officer off his horse. So I raised my Enfield rifle and I squeezed the trigger and I saw you fall. Holy crap. And then, yeah, Fred writes back and he's like, you tell he's realizing he's talking to the guy who shot him. Fred says in a very self-deprecating way, he says, yeah, I was wearing a very conspicuous white hat. That is the white hat that Fred was wearing on the afternoon of July 2nd, 1863, when shot. Pinned to the hat, no, this is all from the family. Pinned to the hat is this note in Fred's handwriting. White hat worn by First Lieutenant T. Fred Brown, commanding Battery B, 1st Rhode Island Light Artillery at Battle of Gettysburg, wounded late in the afternoon of the 2nd. And then he says at the end, it says, a bullet cut away the small piece from the brim. And if you go in the back, you'll see a little bullet hole. Mind, if you've ever fired black powder muzzleloaders at paper targets, you'll see a lead ring around the hole, and you see that lead ring around that hole. When Maria did the conservation of the lining of the hat, we discovered what we believe to be very fine blood spray on the crown of the hat. Is that his blood? Is it somebody else? Who knows? But it's just an astounding artifact from that day.
I didn't know there was this much Civil War history in Rhode Island, of all places. Like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know the state really existed. I thought it was one of those made-up ones like Delaware.
Yeah, part of Long Island.
Yeah. People will tell you Delaware's real. It's not. It's made up. We landed on the moon, yes. Delaware, not a real place.
And Fred Brown says, man, I'm so glad you wounded me on the 2nd. He's like, if I had to live to the 3rd day during Pickett's charge, he's like, all of the artillery commanders in the 2nd Corps Artillery Reserve Brigade were killed. He's like, I would have been killed too. And they wrote back and forth. And so we have the letters that Simeon Theus wrote to Fred. Here's the other crazy thing. So we tracked down Simeon Theus's relatives and people associated with our organization. And it's about 2 years ago now, but the great-great-grandson got in his pickup truck on a Sunday morning in North Carolina, drove all the way up here just to see this and to see his great-great-grandfather's letters. Really nice young kid, just got married. We all had goosebumps. It was just surreal, And the killer thing was he goes, hold on. And he goes out to his truck and he comes back in and he brings us a little box. And inside were all of the letters that Fred had written to his great-great-grandfather.
So you have both sides of the conversation now. That's awesome.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
And after Simeon shot Fred, just after, he took an iron canister round in his thigh and became wounded. And he carried this round in his leg for late into his life. 19 years later, they said it started causing him a lot of pain. He had it surgically removed, and he had it made into a watch fob on a gold chain, and he wore it the rest of his life. They gave us that, so we have that piece too.
Is it on display or is it still?
It's not on display. It's actually sitting in my house, but we are going to add new display cases to put this out with the letters. It's just amazing that all this, it's weird synchronicity that all this stuff kind of comes together. It's like it was meant to be.
This, I don't know the significance of it. So this looks eerily similar to, what is it? The Warrant Officer crest, the Rising Eagle with the wreath in it. I don't know if that is significant to this in any way. I don't know how early the warrant officer existed, but like I was looking at that, I was like, that's very similar to the modern warrant officer crest.
So that's a standard issue buckle for enlisted cavalry. The officer version had a different piece. They actually had silver wreath. That evolved over time, but they used that buckle all the way through the Indian Wars into the late 1800s. It changed a little bit. I think the eagle had faced the other way at some point, but yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this here most recent episode of Habitually Fat. I'm joined today by Nick, the Fat Electrician, and Patrick, who is, would you say, curator of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Executive director.
Yeah, executive director of the Varnum Armory Museum.
One more time, where can they website,
Yep.
Venmo?
So Venmo, if you'd like to support our mission to preserve and share Rhode Island military history, it's at Armory Museum, or you could go to our website and donate with a card, varnumcontinentals.org.
And of course, also a thank you to Mrs. Habitual Line Crosser, because she knocked this one out of the park, and she got us. You know what? We're just going to pass it off to her. She's going to be the one telling us where we're going from now on. See you guys later. Bye.